Forgot my words.
Project tax return. Like, you fucking omit of all his fucking taxes. This is project tax return. I'm gonna this guy over and I'm taking his tax money. Thank you very much.
Take two. All right, here we are. Long morning, stripping more parts off a project tax return. In our last episode, we focused on getting the tubular K-member out with the front coilovers, caster camber plates, and we went ahead and installed a factory type K-member back into the car, got the car back down on new suspension on original pony wheels. I gotta admit, I almost like the look of the ponies in the 16-inch versus the 17-inch ponies that were on there. I don't know why. Maybe just because the car is black and they're polished. Maybe because they look really good with those 5.0 OG 5.0 emblems. So I went ahead and put that one on the driver's side. And the car's starting to look like a car again. Everything looking good in the front, which led us to having to take care of the rear. So in today's episode, we are going to be focusing on removal of a lot of the stuff that you see laying here on the ground behind me and even sitting in that trailer back there. So this project almost reminds me of the 88 notch from last year, the little coupe that could. A lot of those videos were titled Demodifying a Race Car, and a lot of that is the case with this one as well. It's pretty much taking off all of those race components that were put on, and there were a lot of them on this car. So this is sort of like next level of that similar project. So you guys are gonna see what it takes to pull everything off. You know, again, luckily things were pretty clean, things were installed recently, so it's pretty straightforward process. And see what it takes to get all that off, to get this car back to its former glory of being a nice little OG 5.0 street cruiser. And everything underneath this car has been recently built and or installed. So it should be pretty straightforward to pull this rear end out. You know, all the hardware is new and has all been replaced. So gonna go ahead and try and get these tailpipes out of the way. Number one, just to make our lives easier when we're trying to get at the upper control arm bolts, then we'll get at the lower control arms. We'll have to get these strange shocks out of here as well. And then finally, the fuel system. That's pretty much it for the underside here. You can see it is super, super clean. Everything has been painted on the underside as well. So it's a pretty nice car under here. So we'll go ahead, get the tires off, tailpipes off, and start wrenching to get this diff down. All right, so there we go. We got the rear end dropped out of this thing. Wasn't too difficult. I was hoping I could get those exhaust tips off and the section of the cap back to make my life a little bit easier. But thankfully, just because of the way that the control arm setup was, I managed to reach around everything and get it all unbolted. So it is just laying down on the jack there right now. The emergency brake cables are still hooked up, so I got to get those disconnected. But once I get those unhooked, be able to drag that thing out of here.
Bring in the Chevy guy to work on the Ford. Makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Even the Ford guys don't know what they're doing.
No.
Yeah. Happens, you know.
You didn't finish the job.
Now the Chevy guys don't know what they're doing. I thought you said they just pull through.
Yeah, they do. Well, you're down there. I took the little clips off. You just had to do a little shimmy, shimmy.
Sorry,
So here we are, guys. Diff is out of the car. It's a little dusty, but it's a pretty badass diff. Not for sale, spoken for. Now we'll go ahead and get the shocks disconnected up in the trunk and drop that cap back. Gonna have to probably drop the tank because we're gonna have to put a new pump and everything else in there. So that's it. Gonna call it a day on this one and get back tomorrow. Hopefully get what we need put in place. Here we are stripping out all the rear end linkages and arms and pulling this exhaust down and everything else. And funny enough, Brutal is doing a video about revamping the whole rear end on his his Cobra clone. And he was what did he do in the last video? I think he was cutting off the exhaust right here because he was talking about doing dumps because he was concerned about the new rear end setup and not being able to pass axle tubes over. They managed to clear and there was no rubbing. Now, if the car was extremely low, which you know, your Cobra clone does look pretty low, then it could be a different story. Just gonna go ahead here, finish getting this exhaust out, pull out these control arms, and that'll pretty much have us in a position to drop this fuel tank sitting up here behind me, and we'll pretty much have everything stripped off this car that we needed to have stripped off. Now you guys are going to notice I'm actually working on the ground here. You know, working on a lift is nice in a lot of cases, but I do find when you're removing a rear end, it is better to be closer to the ground just because rear end is heavy. It's easier to remove on the jack once it's down lower. So one thing you could do is always, you know, loosen everything off on your lift and then lower the car down just to pull out the last remaining bolts. So that way, you know, you don't end up with your diff sitting 6 feet in the air and potentially falling or crushing you or any of those things. There we go, battling on the floor a little bit, but managed to get everything disconnected. Just have to pull out the 2 little clips for the e-brake cables, as those ones are for disc rear. So grab those out, pull these fuel lines out of here, and I was hoping that I was going to be able to reuse this tank, but as soon as I dropped it down, I noticed that there's twin pumps in there. So this is one hell of a fuel system that was in this car, that's for sure. And gonna make sure to drain the rest of the fuel out of here, probably throw it in the daily driver, and yeah, we'll pull all of this stuff out, clean up our mess, and get organized. So you can see that the underside of this car has had a tremendous amount of labor incorporated into getting it this nice and clean under here. It's really a nice sight to see when the underside of your Fox is just as clean as the top side. So definitely a lot of time and effort went into this. There's been a lot of reinforcing, not only the subframe connectors, but in terms of the torque boxes, the control arm box areas, all of those have been welded in and reinforced, you know, to take all of the torque and the power that the previous drivetrain was giving this car. So needless to say, it's going to be a really nice base and foundation for our project here. All right, so I'm finally out from underneath that car, just wiping down all the tools and everything that I used, trying to get organized. Bagged and tagged all of the nuts and bolts and hardware that was used for that diff that I pulled out, and a lot of that hardware is going to be reused since it's all shiny and new. It'll look really good when we put our freshly painted lower, upper, and control arms and all of that stuff back into the car. Honestly, the biggest pain in the ass in that whole process, if you can believe it or not, was actually getting the emergency brake cables. Those little clips, they're a pain. I tried getting a socket on there, and it wasn't pushing the clips down far enough to pull it through. Finally ended up using this nifty little tool right here. I swear by this thing, guys. Every time I'm working on a Fox, I use it, whether I'm trying to pull old hoses off of the the heater core or off the water pump. Man, that tool is just great and it saved me a lot of times. So all those parts are off the car. Now we got to get some parts to put back in the car. So luckily there's nothing really to do on the underside of it. Man, like that underside, I'm sure you guys have seen in the clips and everything while I've been working away under there. It's super clean. It's nice. It's black. It's all painted, everything else. So all I got to do now is pull the main cable that was for the battery relocate in the trunk. Got to pull that back through since that was actually run through the interior of the car. So I'll get that out of the way, and that's pretty much it. The car is going to be ready, and that means I got to strip the 86. So you can see there's a truck on the lift here. Once that truck can come down, then I'll be bringing the 86 in, and she's going to get tore down. So there's a lot of nice new parts on there. If you guys haven't seen that video, despite the body not being as nice as it could be, there's a lot of new parts on there. You know, there's new struts, there's new shocks. The rear end looks like it's been serviced. You know, all the brakes are new. Even the U-joints and the drive shaft were all changed recently. New starter. It's a really good parts car, and it's perfect for a project like this. So I know a lot of you guys are like, oh, I shouldn't strip that car down. Well, it's gonna get stripped, sorry to say. I'm hoping that somebody's gonna wanna pick it up and give it a second life. And you know, like I said, it's a pretty solid car. Just the value to me and what we're doing here, it's worth more in parts. And sometimes you need to have parts cars, and this is one of them. So the nice thing about this project is usually you go through tear down or, you know, demolition, so to speak. And that's always pretty excited because you're just like, go, go, go. The project is new. You're excited. You're getting involved. And then there's sometimes that phase of project anxiety, which kind of goes back to a video that I did not too long ago, where you kind of say, oh shit, what did I get myself into? And that's where there's a lot of cleanup and preparation and tidying, part inventory and gathering. And, you know, you just kind of get overwhelmed with everything that needs to happen. And that's sort of what the nice part of this project is that all of the cleanup and tidy work is pretty much already been done. I'm gonna have to do some work on whatever engine's gonna go in here and make sure that it's detailed and up to my standards. And there's already been some little things that I've been doing along the way. There's actually this inner fender that's sitting right here in the background. This was included with the car, and it was full of green overspray. So I've already cleaned that up and made it look like new. And it's things like that that can be tedious and take up a lot of time, but the end result is always so rewarding. So things like that. I got some components for the AC system that I've already cleaned up. You know, I got the AC compressor and all that because this is an AC car that does have functioning AC. So all that stuff needs to be bolted back into place. And that's pretty much it. So stay tuned for the rest of this project. The next video, like I said, will probably be tear down of the 86. And thanks for all of your support and following along, especially if you guys have stuck around this long to watch these videos all the way to the end. I do have some fresh merchandise that is fresh off the press. So if you guys are interested in some merch, it is going to be coming, some t-shirts, some hoodies, and I got some brand new t-shirt designs that are going to be dropping soon as well. I highly recommend that you follow me on Instagram. It's just easier to manage some of the inquiries and everything else on there. I always, you know, put some new ideas of concepts that I'm coming up with for new designs and everything else. And yeah, if you guys are interested in some t-shirts and hoodies, check that out. They'll be posted up on my website soon, theinfamousproject.com. So till next time, we'll see you guys soon.